Let's start with Alvin Kamara. Do you think there's precedent to suggest that would get done before camp?
Well, there's precedent to suggest it, but for it to happen, I think part of the hindrance there is going to be that the cap, we don't know exactly how it's going to go the next couple of years, how high it's going to go after this season, just because of the way that the NFL is going to structure it with the potential of loss of revenue this year. And so they're still sorting that out, even though Mickey Loomis did say that he doesn't feel like any of that stuff would prohibit the Saints from trying to do as much as business as usual. You know how much they do the salary cap algebra better than most, if not every team, because they just kick the can down the road every year. But I do feel like that the Saints do want to pay Alvin Kamara. Now, do they want to go into the Christian McCaffrey, Zeke Elliott range? Probably not. But do I think he deserves to go a little bit below that? Yes, I do. So there's probably going to be some butting of the heads. And, yeah, it's funny that Mickey Loomis, of course, even outside of the soundbite you gave, he was just thinking about, of course, how much, I hate talking about this. And it was my colleague, Catherine Terrell, who actually asked the question. And so it became kind of a joke in that, yeah, why are you even asking me that? You know what my answer is going to be.
Right. I want to cover a lot of ground. What about the opt-outs? Reaction to that, and how big of a deal is this for New Orleans?
I don't think it's that big of a deal. Look, you saw the two players who opted out. It was Jason Vanderland and Cole Wick. And color me skeptical, but in some cases, players who probably won't make the team may see this as an easy payday.
Mm-hmm.
I can see where there are medical concerns, this, that, and the other. But it's different when you see Jason Vanderland and Cole Wick do it as opposed to very notable names in New England do it. And Eddie Goldman with the Bears. These are players of different stature, and they don't need the money, so they're not just bailing out to collect a paycheck. They're taking a massive pay cut to do it. So, color me skeptical in some of that. But, look, both Sean and Mickey were both asked about that as far as do they expect other players to do it, and they really they didn't know how to answer it because they don't know. I mean, it could happen at any point in time, but here's the kicker that people need to understand. If you opt out, you're out. You cannot come back in 2020. That is a decision that is, once it's done, it's final. It's like the old injured reserve rule. Once you're there, you're there. But, obviously the IR has some different rules now. But, yeah, once you opt out, you're done for the year.
Larry Holder's with us, theathletic.com/New Orleans. He's on Twitter at Larry Holder. Be sure to give him a follow. What else last night from Mickey Loomis struck you that people need to know?
Oh, boy. Well, I'm trying to sift through Mickey again because we got Sean earlier today. I think from Mickey's standpoint, maybe the Kamara thing, even though we know that that's something that he would not discuss. But as far as unknown, I think it's a lot of unknown. Like, he was asked questions, and some of the things he couldn't answer because he really did not know the answers to. And I think that is a big element of where we're going here as far as rules can change, procedures can change. And I know people don't want to talk. People at this point in time want to probably talk about what's going on the field. They'd rather us talk about Kamara's contract than COVID.
Mm-hmm.
But it's such a big thing, so much so where today Sean Payton says, look, this is the antithesis of a training camp. This is not a training camp. Don't even call it that. Just call it a preseason because you cannot have the same sort of workouts, the same sort of evaluation, as far as that goes. So to me, that's my, and I'm going to pivot, but my biggest takeaway from Sean today was that he admitted, look, he would not be surprised at all if there was some sort of disruption of play. And Mickey Loomis didn't want to go that far, but Sean Payton did go that far. A lot of the national reporters were kind of retweeting that and taking that because Payton was open about it.
Let's elaborate a little more on that. Payton, and I got your tweet up here about Sean Payton saying he would not be surprised if NFL games are suspended. We also saw that there are partitions in the locker and all that. But let's step away for a moment, if we could, from the COVID stuff, because I think at this point everyone understands what it is. Like, there's going to be positive tests. There's always uncertainty. But it feels like the coaches and players are trying to move forward with football and let what may come. So what about on the field? Like, obviously, people are going to want to know what's going to happen with Cesar Ruiz. What did Sean Payton say?
Yeah, look, I asked him specifically about that, what his approach would be with Ruiz and McCoy, and he said, look, he's going to rotate those guys at center and guard, and that's something I absolutely anticipated. Look, is this something that I was the first to start talking about back at the Combine, where they felt like they could move Eric McCoy to guard, and if they draft or acquire a center, they would do so. And look, I think it's something that Sean Payton said, look, he's going to evaluate what they do in practice, this, that, and the other. And it's definitely going to be different because you're not going to have the sample size of snaps to evaluate if you want to keep McCoy at center or have Ruiz play center. And then obviously the other person would play guards. And so, that is something that I know a lot of us are going to be looking at because of the way the middle of the offensive line played last year and the wonderment over the first-round pick playing right away as opposed to their first pick last year if he's going to be moved to a different position.
What about the players to whom they will be snapping the ball? How are they going to manage rotating these quarterbacks?
Sean Payton did say today that they are not worried about, say, a rep count for Drew Brees, that especially the fact that we haven't done as many and will have as many this offseason, that doesn't bother him. He is more worried about that later in the season, though. He definitely admitted that. So as the season goes, scale back Drew Brees' reps at practice because he's 41 years old. But as far as with Jameis Winston, I asked Mickey Loomis about it yesterday, and I know the question was asked to Sean Payton today, just going to evaluate that position and that if they're kind of not upset but disappointed that they won't be able to see as much of Jameis as they thought. And so, Mickey Loomis kind of diverted the answer because I don't know why. That was like really a layup question. Of course, you want to see him play. But, I do think that is going to be hindered there. And I'm still under the impression that Jameis Winston is your number two, just like Teddy Bridgewater was last year. And I'd be shocked if anything changed outside of that.
A couple more minutes here with Larry Holder, theathletic.com/New Orleans. You get him on Twitter at Larry Holder. I know you and Kat Terrell had dueling 53-man roster projections because these are just so fun to do this time of year. What was your hardest decision you had to make?
I think wide receiver was a really hard discussion just because outside of the top two, and then you throw in Traquan Smith, you just assume he's going to be on the roster, and you count Deontay Harris there, but everybody else is just a crapshoot. I also think that you could run into maybe, say, a surprise cut, as in what if someone like Anthony Chickalo, you like him more than Craig Robertson, and then he's cut. And so, I think part of that, offensive line too. I think I really like Calvin Throckmorton, but he's an undrafted rookie. You haven't seen him in your system. I mean, would he beat out players like Cameron Tom or Will Clapp? And so I think that's kind of a tough call there too. And so, it's not a lot of frontline stuff. We're to the point where it's a lot of backline stuff. And I also left Tommy Stevens off my roster. I thought that you could probably leave him be, and then he could come back in a practice squad mode. Or if you do keep him and you keep him 2 days into after cuts, then you cut him and you kind of circle him back into a practice squad. But, I know it's a 7th round pick in the Panthers storyline, but, I could see the Saints still letting him walk and then come back later as a practice squad guy.
Honestly, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I was surprised when I asked you the question what was your toughest cut that you didn't go to the Stevens route because you didn't have him on there. So I want you to elaborate, though, a little more, if you would, on the whole Panthers storyline. The idea that you traded back into the draft, essentially 2 picks to get Stevens to keep him away from Carolina. And if you cut him, Carolina could just sign him.
Part of that is pettiness, for sure. Sean Payton trying to stick it to Joe Brady. That is certainly a thing. I think that happened. And we're not talking you're jumping ahead. Like, okay, we're not talking about the Chiefs jumping ahead of the Saints to draft Patrick Mahomes because the Chiefs knew that the Saints really liked Patrick Mahomes. I mean, we're talking about a 7th-round guy. So I'm not investing a lot of that. I've seen 7th-round picks, 6th-round picks, 5th-round picks, 4th-round picks not make rosters. So I am not going to be like, oh, my gosh, they gave up an arm and a leg for him. So I've got to see it to believe it with him. And so, if you cut him and you lose a 7th-round guy, so be it.
And then Joe Brady could be like, yep, you have 2 picks, and we still got him anyway.
Well, Joe Brady still is certainly not Sean Payton. So I think we'll see it that way.
No argument here, man. I don't think the guy's going to – Hey, Larry, I agree with you. How do you have a spot for Tommy Stevens? I don't see it. I mean, it's a good idea in theory, behind, like as the next Taysom Hill sort of thing, but there's going to be another one of these guys next year. I mean, just get the one next year sort of thing. I digress. All right, Larry Holder, theathletic.com/New Orleans. He's on Twitter @Larry Holder. Saints camp is upon us. Make sure you're following Larry's work for all the latest there. Thanks, man. We appreciate you.
Bye, Mac. Talk to you again.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.